Guts of Grace by Grant Hawley is a collection of 34 lessons on Christian discipleship. Grant presents 34 different lessons for the new disciple, or ideally the mature disciple, to take a new disciple through with him. These lessons are grouped into 5 different sections: hermeneutics, free grace, life and liberty, life in the body of Christ, and the kingdom. Reading this, I felt time and again that I wish this book had been written in 2008 and not in 2013. So I could have had it at the very beginning of my ministry and not needed to reinvent the wheel so many times when I was teaching my own lessons on these subjects. But I wish I had Grant's great work, which he had compiled together for this book. I think the strongest of the 5 sections in this book was the first one. I really loved how he taught hermeneutics. I loved his points of emphasis, especially his sections on interpreting prophecy and the Bible study method. Throughout this, I was like, man, I would not have needed to make up my own lessons on hermeneutics if I had just had this first, or this would have been an awesome foundation as I was writing my own. This is really good stuff on hermeneutics. His entire section on free grace was also very much appreciated for someone like me who didn't discover the free grace movement until I moved down south in 2015. The teachings of free grace need to get out there. They need a place to shine in Christianity today. The views of free grace also are in such a minority that if even someone gets saved and is discipled in a free grace church, you need to be prepared to interact with other materials that aren't in the free grace message. So we need to be clear on what the gospel message is, and Grant does a wonderful job both of explaining the gospel. I also thought Grant did a wonderful job bringing up all the tough texts that people will bring up in order to combat the free grace view of the gospel in lessons 13 and 14. So the first 2 sections of the book are the best sections, and I don't say that to say that sections 3 through 5 are in any way deficient, but based on my reading of this book, I would say his skills are in both biblical interpretation and an explanation of the gospel. His lessons on liberty, the church, and the kingdom are all good. They're just not at the same level as those first 2 sections. I also appreciate that the book contains really good questions at the end of each lesson. As a pastor who writes discussion questions each week for our church's growth groups, I understand how challenging it can be to write really good discussion questions. So for me, it is much appreciated that they are included in this book. I have a bunch of favorite quotes, but here are probably the 2 that took the top for me. The one correct interpretation is what the author intended by what he wrote. This is such a simple quote, but it is so important for a correct understanding of the Bible. So often theology can become a set of shackles that is holding us down, that is keeping what should be mature Christians trapped, type of spiritual infancy. I'm shocked at how many Christians cannot read the Bible with understanding because they are trapped in a faulty theology. We need to get back to looking more at the author's intent more than our own confessional statements. And my favorite quote in the book is, "The phrase, 'the high cost of salvation,' should only be applied to what Christ did on the cross, and never to what a person must do to receive the gift." Salvation is priceless because of what Jesus did on the cross, and not because anything that any person will do in response to what Jesus did on the cross. And I'm definitely stealing that quote for my own presentations of the gospel in the future. So Guts of Grace. If I had to describe it anyway, I would say it is just a really nice collection of lessons to help disciple someone in their walk in the faith. And I'd also want to say that if you want to get a gift to give to someone who is newly ordained or just hired at a new church, I would send them a copy of The Guts of Grace by Grant Hawley, because we need more of this type of instruction in the church. I encourage every pastor that I know to own a copy of The Guts of Grace, have it on your Kindle or on your bookshelf. And if you enjoyed this review and would like to stay engaged in the wonderful world of Christian literature, please subscribe to the Rev Reads YouTube channel.